of the town.
This conversation will bring together diverse perspectives from across the ecosystem, including development finance institutions, impact investors, financial institutions, and the private sector to explore how we can unlock more financing for women entrepreneurs in Nepal. To moderate this discussion, it is my pleasure and honor to invite Ms. Cecile Rivere, Program Manager at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, STC. Ms. Rivere, the session is all yours. Thank you very much.
Kelly has shown us quite eloquently how women entrepreneurs in Nepal make what may seem at first a bit of a strange choice. Why would an entrepreneur choose a more expensive product to get finance, or even an informal one, based on customer services? But then if you think about it as an entrepreneur, it makes sense. You already have a business to run. If you're a woman, often you also have a family to run. So the last thing you want to do is to fight with a banker if you can spare you the trouble at a reasonable price. But I would like an entrepreneur to confirm that assumption. So Mrs. Rana, so we were just explaining this was a major hurdle for women entrepreneurs, customer services. But in your experience as an entrepreneur, is it something you faced, or do you think here in Nepal, and maybe especially in the younger generation, do you think it's still the main problem for women entrepreneurs?
I think we should target the grassroots women also, So we feel that the largely rooted patriarchal inheritance norms like property ownership and all, that's one of the challenging part, because mostly institutions like banks and other financial institutions, they ask for the collateral for any kind of loans. So when you talk about the women, even the census of 2021, they have shown that 19.7% only the women, they own the land or any kind of property. And most of the property is also a joint property. So that is lacking of collateral is one of the biggest problem, I feel. And another challenge is most of the women business are not formally registered. So when the business is not formally registered, it's very difficult to access the finance also from any kind of institutions and all. So a lot of times what happens is, even when government announces some kind of subsidies, and some package for women, they disqualified because the business are not formally registered.
Now, if I turn to the financial sector, the commercial bank representative, Mrs. Pandey, we have also heard briefly mentioned by Mrs. Rana that there are incentives, there are policies passed by the central bank to try to address, at least partially, these collateral challenges. In your opinion, do they work? And if so, why? And if not, why?
The directives, the incentives, definitely they have increased awareness and access. If you were to look at the latest subsidized report released by NRB, as at date, over 51,000 women entrepreneurs are enjoying this subsidized loan facility from commercial banks alone. Now, this speaks very highly about how, if opportunities feel accessible, more there is an increasing number of women venturing into the formal finance space, thanks to collateral-free loan and rural market access. That has definitely helped access. There also has been a behavioral shift in banks. The directives from the central bank has prompted us bank to look at women entrepreneurs as a strategic segment, not just as a checkbox. And finally, this has definitely given an early start boost for entrepreneurs. Interest subsidies and collateral-free loans have definitely helped women entrepreneurs get rid of the initial hiccups to get into business. Now, here's what is missing. we are looking at, the short-term incentives, they do not equate to long-term sustainability. Let's look at the policy. The policy seems highly skewed towards micro and small enterprises. Interest subsidies, they don't address core commercial viability. Once the subsidy ends, the bank may lose motivation altogether. Also, collateral-free loans, if you look at it, they are capped at a certain amount, and they often fail to address the scale-up issue of business. So we really need a clear roadmap for scaling business through capital, capacity building, and market access, which is really missing.
Nepal is going in the right direction, but there is still a lot of work to be done. And we heard it in Kelly's presentation. And Mrs. Oli, I would also like to hear what ADB's perspective is. How do you assess Nepal in the region? We've seen very interesting examples from India, from the Philippines. In the work you do you think Nepali women entrepreneurs' access to finance is indeed going into the right direction, and you see it, you accompany it, or do you think it's not getting fast enough, or there is something else Nepal should and must learn from its neighbors?
We look at supporting women's entrepreneurship. We look at it from an angle of financial inclusion, from institutional reform and policy reform, and from capacity building, which really focuses on financial and digital literacy. So in the region, we've worked with governments to really on the policy side, including in Pakistan, where we actually help them set up the strategy for women's entrepreneurship. We also had the State Bank of Pakistan sign on to the Women's Entrepreneurship Financial Code and try to implement that through the financial sector. Similarly, in Sri Lanka, we've been working on a SME line of credit project through the central bank and through the financial intermediaries, where the large focus is on how do we solve issues around access to finance, around business capacity, on weak policies, and on poor data on women entrepreneurs. I think where Nepal needs to do a lot more work is really defining what are MSMEs, what is a women-owned led MSME, or what do you categorize as a woman entrepreneur? How are you tracking that data, especially through registration? That's, I think, something where Nepal is falling behind. In India, you have the Udyam registration. A lot of the schemes are applicable for clients that have a Udyam registration with the ministries. A lot of the subsidy schemes flow through self-help groups that are registered. So there's a lot that's happening in India, the closest neighbor. Nepal is not too far behind, I would say. I think there are efforts being made, especially through the NRB, with the target for supporting SMEs, with a target for supporting women entrepreneurs through the subsidy scheme. I'll give you an example of a private sector project that we have worked on. It's not yet live. We hope that it will be live later this year. But we did the same assessment in the market. Some of the feedback that we got was interest rates were quite high, and this was back in 2023 when interest rates were quite high. Similar feedback around collateral requirements. And that was on the client side, the risk perception, the interest rate, the collateral requirement. On the bank side, the bank was not ready. They did not have the proper systems, process, channels, I would say, to reach out to women entrepreneurs. So this also goes back to what Kelly was talking about, the gaps around outreach modules, the product design, and the sales technique. So to get the bank ready to be able to support women entrepreneurs, we agreed on a gender assessment and action plan, which required the bank to have a couple of branches that are staffed by women. At least a certain percentage of the sales staff would have to be women, who would then reach out to the women entrepreneurs. I think being from Nepal, not really an entrepreneur, but I also know that, walking into a bank can be intimidating. Walking into a government office can be intimidating for a woman. So training the sales staff on how to talk to women, gender sensitization. And we're working with the bank really on how to focus on alternative data sources, not just rely on traditional credit models around collateral or credit behavior, banking behavior, because that seems to be lacking in Nepal.
Now, I would like also to hear from an impact investor, because as an impact investor, Mr. Tiwari, you not only invest in women entrepreneurs, you also advise them and support them in their business endeavor. So could you explain to us how you combine this impact investing lens with this advisory role, and what kind of solution or product you've been developing to support your investees?
It's often the need to have a platform that can help them get exposed to those investor groups. It's not to say that let's have 5 angel networks set up in Nepal and they'll unlock the investments. It's about making sure there's a platform through which they get the visibility, they get the exposure, and they're able to get connections with the right investors, which also allows you to crowd in foreign capital into Nepal using those intermediary solutions as a way to actually unlock capital. And then, of course, you have the role of intermediary. So demand, supply, and I'm not even talking about capacity, awareness, all that goes without saying. That's the second aspect. How do you look at demand and supply and looking at each enterprise requirement? Third actually is to bring number 1 and number 2 together to create financing solutions, either directly supporting SMEs or actually going through financial intermediaries. So I'll again give an example. For any bank or FI or a non-banking finance company, as I said, really there you have to create a business case for it. If you are able to say that, okay, you invest in this particular segment because it'll give you better brand positioning, it'll help you build your business, or it'll help you get access to a new set of investors. If you're able to join the dots between what they're doing with their lending practices or portfolio segment with their capital raise strategy or their business growth strategy, then the banks and the FIs will actually very willingly do it. So we are working with a non-banking finance company in Indonesia, which is the largest ultra micro lender in Indonesia, state-owned entity. They have over 20 million beneficiaries. More than 80% are actually women. So very strong focus on supporting micro small enterprises. We actually went to them and built a case around blended finance, saying you already have women in the portfolio. Why don't you actually look at building a bridge between this and your plan to raise capital? Right? So now we are helping them issue a gender-focused bond. At IX, we call them orange bonds. Orange draws from the color of UNSG 5 gender equality, similar to green or blue. And we are globally advocating how orange bonds or orange capital can be further adopted by different stakeholders. So they are now going to issue Indonesia's first orange bond, clearly linking their treasury team and their finance team with what they're doing on ground, bringing more capital into the institute, which they will, of course, then further utilize to on-lend to even more women entrepreneurs. So to be able to draw that linkage, I think, is very essential. Similarly, in some markets in Southeast Asia, even in South Asia, perhaps a bond is not the solution. Bond requires a certain level of maturity, but there are innovative guarantee mechanisms, right? Where, again, we are working with a few stakeholders on this, where you work with a microfinance institution or a bank or a non-banking finance company, create a guarantee fund so that there is an incentive for them to actually look at lending to more women-focused enterprises. These could be the ones that have either exhausted their credit limits or don't have easy access to bank financing. But the guarantee allows the bank or the NBFC to actually lend to that segment. And then you bundle TA along with it. So you're actually getting the bank or the NBFC to embrace ESG, sustainable finance, through this whole lending mechanism. And you're bringing TA to improve the impact score, impact assessment of the enterprise on the ground. So it's a bundled offering which actually allows more capital to flow through financial intermediaries as well.
What I hear from you and from ADB or from Lakshmi Bank is that there are progress being made, there are products to be developed, there are solutions on the way. But here again, Mrs. Rana, I need you for the reality check. Is it practical? What would you, as an entrepreneur, advise a bank or an investor to do? Are you happy about the solution that have just been presented, or do you wish there would be something else out there?
Providing microfinance is not very difficult, like small institutions, even in district and all, they are doing it. But if women want to scale up their business from micro to small or small to medium, then I think they face a lot of problem. So firstly, like as I mentioned, I said we need to formalize their businesses, because almost like 70% of women in Nepal, they are not registered, it's informal business. So bringing them in a formal sector is one of the challenges, and institutions like FNCCI, like we have chapters in all over Nepal, in district chapters, even FWIN, Federation of Women Entrepreneurs and all, they are trying to bring women and then give them like a kind of support to formalize their business also. So I think even institutions like, working institutions like foreign institutions who really want to uplift the women's status and all, and even the banking sector, they need to do a little more, I feel, they do have like funds for women-run business and all, but to get that kind of fund is quite challenging, because now all the banks are going into digitalization also. So that is also one of the challenge which women they face. So how to get the loan, so how to get into this banking, digitalization also is one of the challenge. So I think we need to give them knowledge in that. And then there's so many formalities you have to do. So getting into that also, women, they really feel not very comfortable. So I think we have to make more friendly, kind of women-friendly system for that,
We need to move away from quotas and focus on outcomes. Instead of actually telling branches to allocate or to write X number of loans to women, how about rewarding outcomes? How about banks that perform well on gender finance numbers? They are rewarded with like what Nikunj also mentioned, partial credit guarantees. It could be reduced capital weights or even capital reliefs as such. This would definitely align the gender finance with the business logic and not just limited to compliance as such. Next, as Bhavani ji also rightly pointed out, we need to build an ecosystem. So we need to combine access to finance with access to knowledge, tools, so that women actually what they need in addition to financing is mentorship, access to markets, business training, digital skills. So what we could do is development organizations and regulators and us banks can team up to develop gender smart products that actually address the realities on the ground, and not just a sophisticated version of the or rebranded version of the standard loan products as such. Third, what I would like to suggest is, and Bhavani ji also and Nikunj also pointed out, is we need to build capacity within the banks. Of course, for gender finance starts with mindset and capability. What we need to do is, let us be honest, our own team needs to be more gender aware.
Which point in your eyes is the one ADB is the best position to address?
ADB is best positioned on the ecosystem, working through with the regulator, with the government, different ministries, working with federal level entities, with cooperatives, with private sector players, with public sector players to really push that agenda. There's been a couple of programs that we've worked on. One was the Skills Development Program, which really worked with CTEVT on the technical and vocational training side, where we were also helping design more gender-friendly training or more gender-specific training, because the training that they had, they're very conventional, right? So how do we bring gender elements to it? How do we make sure that it's catering to women entrepreneurs and their needs? So that was a program that we did. Right now, we're also running a program called the Rural Enterprise Financing Project, which is being done through the Sana Kisan, or the Small Farmers Development Bank, which is working with cooperatives and with a special focus on women entrepreneurs, and it's also working with individual enterprises. And I think the outreach is quite good, and within that outreach, about 75% of outreach is for women. What's being done is also, looking at financial literacy, digital literacy for women. How do we create a digital platform where women entrepreneurs could showcase their products, also find vendors for inputs that they need? How do we make that market linkage more seamless, more time effective, and more cost efficient as well?
Mr. Tiwari, here I would also ask you to bring maybe the outside perspective, or what would you say to a Nepali investor willing to enter in that space? How would you convince them this is the right space to invest in based on the experience you've made in India but across the region? What's the business case for an investor?
We are already engaged with the Bangladesh government to try to see how this transition will be managed. So when you go to Bangladesh today, there are a lot of discussions within the government, in the financial sector, to see what will be the consequences of this transition, which means that the concessional capital and the DFI money that Bangladesh has been used to receiving will start shrinking, which also means that you need to now invest in market-based financing. So you build your capital markets, build your financial markets, create awareness capacities among banks, financial institutions, corporate sector, on understanding what can capital market do for you and what you need to embrace as an organization. So it's an opportunity for you to build sustainability within capital markets, more social lens, deeper gender lens, deeper climate lens into these financing models. Now, my experience last 2 days of being in Nepal, there are no such discussions in Nepal. There will be consequences for Nepalese economy also when you make the transition. When we talk about scaling foreign investments, it doesn't only mean scaling DFI money. Okay? DFI or development money plays a very crucial catalytic role. The idea really is to see how can the DFI money now, and whatever DFIs are in this room, what sort of programs can they create over the next 2 or 3 years that creates leverage on the development money and helps unlock more private capital in Nepal. I did not actually come across those discussions. So, and you see world over in South Asia, Southeast Asia, the talk is about seeing what is the role that the DFIs can play to create leverage. Every $1 that development money puts in, can that unlock $5 or $6 of private sector capital? That is building sustainability in capital markets. After 2026, all the institutions will have to rely on being creative in looking at their capital generation. And this is where gender lens financing, social lens financing, thematic bonds, innovative financing can actually play a very crucial role. So from now until 2026, how do we invest in creating those programs, build the institutional capacity, help the banks and the FIs look at and experiment with these solutions in a small way. Maybe look at a guarantee mechanism, look at innovative credit lines, look at funds that actually bring in the private sector capital. To me, that is the most crucial milestone happening in Nepal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tiwari. And indeed, I think it's very important linkage established between LDC graduation and the topic of the panelist. I would like to take questions from the audience nonetheless before we hear the concluding remarks.
What kind of support IIX can kind of give to Nepal or your organization to come up with innovative products and services for the SME, women-centric SME in this country? Thank you.
In fact, yes, at Lakshmi Sunrise Bank, we have definitely, whatever areas that I have stated in my response, we have identified capacity building, business development service as a major hurdle in addition to access to finance. So just around 6 months back, we have set up a dedicated unit, Women Financial Services unit at our bank. This is 100% run by women, and organization-wide We For Her initiative has been launched. So what our bank, we have the head of Women Financial Services also sitting here in the audience. So what we have started doing is we are enlisting different business development services that a woman entrepreneur requires. And we are conducting trainings via our branches across the provinces. So basically, it's the process has already begun, but it's very it's in the evolving stage, and we'll continue to build on that.
So it's my privilege to conclude this panel, but I think our panelists first deserve a round of applause from your side. And second, because they've been extremely productive this morning, we came up with a plan, we came up with an ecosystem building strategy. So I think they deserve to have the last word on the panel and not I. So I'll ask all the panelists to answer really in 30 seconds the following question. Are you optimistic about gender financing in Nepal? And in one sentence, why? Are you or are you not? We start with you, Mrs. Oli.
I will say I am optimistic about gender financing in Nepal. I think both from a demand and supply side, I think women are now more in the forefront. Women are more educated than they were before. Women are more entrepreneurial. My generation, I see a lot of people, my colleagues, my classmates who've come back and set up businesses. Now, this is limited to Kathmandu for me, but I think overall this is happening, within Nepal, where women are more in the forefront. And I think from the supply side through different incentives, financing and other services are going to be supporting women entrepreneurs.
I am decidedly optimistic. And given the 30-second time frame, I'd like to borrow a statement from Kelly's presentation, which she has so powerfully captured. She said in her presentation that financing women doesn't just uplift individual, it transforms families, community, and entire economies.
I think definitely we are very optimistic, especially the private sector is being always optimistic, even in difficult times and all. So I see improvement. And then not only from the private sector, but I think the government, the central bank and banks, they're coming up with a lot of good scheme and all. And then I think we have more scheme to see in future also. And of course, like Mr. Pandey said, if a woman is uplifted, I think not only the society, the family, but the whole nation is uplifted.
For Nepal, I'm especially optimistic. I think it's a tremendous opportunity. With so much happening, so I will look forward to learning more. Thank you.
So we have a unanimously optimistic panel, and now I'm very keen to hear what the regulator has to say, because the work of a regulator is not to be an optimist, but to make sure that nothing wrong happens. So thank you.
Talk of the Town.